Hey everybody, welcome to the Real United States. And well, one of the unfortunate things about filming a vlog that's done out in the world is that Mother Nature sometimes doesn't want to allow you to do that. It wants to stop you with ice and snow or rain or wind or whatever, and today is one of those occasions. So as you can see behind me, this snow pile is actually our truck, which I'm sure you've seen in other episodes, at least glimpses of, and it's got about 5 inches of snow sitting on it. And I am unwilling to go out today into the world and jeopardize myself on the roads, although I think they've probably been plowed and salted. They are still somewhat treacherous, and you can see it is still snowing, and we got about 5 inches. We're expecting upwards of a foot of snow here in the greater Washington, D.C. area. Actually, we're up in southern Maryland, just outside of D.C., and I'm just not willing to do it, but I didn't want you to have to go without content this week, and I'll explain why that actually is a little difficult. Beverly and I have suffered some personal losses this past week. Two very devastating losses back to back, just about 3 days apart. And it's, you know, made us think and deal with our own mortality and thing. So I want to mention a few people. I want to mention Roger Michael Arrington, who I always called Mike. And Mike was probably my very closest, dearest friend in the world for a couple of decades. And he acquired mouth and throat cancer just a few months after I acquired sinus cancer, and had to have a massive surgery which messed him up pretty bad. And well, anyway, he was getting better, I thought, and then the cancer metastasized. It moved to other parts of his body in late December, and he fell into a coma and passed away on Monday, January 4th, or Friday, January 4th. And, well, I was grieving. I couldn't do much of anything, and over the weekend, and then, you know, I got my stuff together and went on about life, and on the following Friday I found out that on Monday another very close dear friend of mine, Paula Stenzler, doctor of engineering and senior director for Universal Creative, passed away from brain cancer. Now, Paula was at one time my boss at Universal, but we became very close personal friends. We've known each other for a couple of decades. Actually, Mike and I both worked for Paula at one time together, and she was only a few months older than me. So obviously, these people passing suddenly from cancers after what I've been through has me not only deeply saddened and grieving, but terrified for my own well-being. I'm sorry, folks, but I'm human. Anyway, so this week, you know, we're not doing much else. I wanted to talk to you a bit about loss and grief, because it's not something that's American. It's not something it's just something that's human. And not even human. I suppose most animals are capable of feeling loss. I know birds are, many higher mammals are capable of feeling loss when someone close to them is gone, is dead. And so much like eating and drawing breath, it is one thing that unites us all, is this understanding of loss and grief. And interestingly enough, I'd like to shout out for one more person. Another YouTuber, a friend of mine, Jeff Howard from the channel Mississippi Wildlife, also this week lost a close personal friend, Gene Deaton, and has made a short video about it on Facebook. Obviously deeply touched. We all have to deal with this. It's something we don't like, and we don't really know how to deal with. And I'm sorry about that. I wish I had some great words of wisdom. Since y'all come here often, if you've made it this far in the video, for some sort of a history lesson, I will share with you and now a book called A Grief Observed. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's by British writer and Professor C.S. Lewis. Lewis also is the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. Maybe that's what you know him best for. But Lewis married late in life, and he married a woman who was an American, and he was British, so that she could get citizenship. It was sort of a political marriage, but they fell in love. And afterwards they had a religious Christian marriage, but his wife, Joy, Helen technically, but she went by Joy, had bone cancer. And it went into remission for a number of years, but then it came back and she died, and Lewis was devastated. And he wrote like 3 notebooks full of papers about his personal experience with grief. And when it was all compiled in a book in the early 1960s, she died in 1960, so it was, I think, 62 that it was compiled and published under the title A Grief Observed. And years later, in the 1990s, his stepson, Joy's son actually, in the foreword noted the specific article A. It was A Grief Observed, not Grief Observed. It was important because it was Lewis's personal dealing and observations of how one deals with grief. Not a general treatise on grief. It wasn't some kind of deeply technical psychological thing. He wasn't a psychologist. It was his personal observations on the feeling of loss. And of course he was a layperson theologian, so it also dealt a lot with his questioning of his faith, which upset a lot of people apparently at the time, but whatever. It's a touchy issue, and for me right now it's a very touchy issue because, well, anyway, we won't go into that. But Lewis ended up dying in 1963 on November 22nd. Now, some of you, certainly my age and older, are going, wait a minute, November 22nd, 63, what is that? Well, it turns out that Lewis died 55 minutes before John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And that's why the news was kind of overshadowed. His passing wasn't really newsworthy given the events of that day. But certainly, I don't know, certainly a great loss to literature, to lose Lewis. Interesting day. On that same day, Aldous Huxley passed away. And if you're struggling with that one, well, Aldous Huxley was an author also who wrote A Brave New World. Very controversial book for the day that it was written in the 1930s. Very controversial. So, anyway, a bad day in history, but I digress. Lewis's book has become something of I don't know. It's become something that a lot of people turn to when they're going through with this same thing with the loss of a loved one. Certainly with the loss of a spouse. And I know I'm feeling this bad and I've lost my friends. I know their families. I know Paula's daughters and her son. I can't imagine what they're going through with the loss of their mother. I've lost my mother. I understand on some level what it's like. I know Mike's wife. I know I have recently met his sister. I don't know his son, but I can imagine. I know he has a son and a stepson. I can't imagine their loss, their grief. But I try and empathize. And so, folks, today, on this horrifically snowy day, when the roads are treacherous, and, well, it's just, I didn't want you to go without content, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why I'm not out in the field shooting something historical for you or some small town or something. Beverly and I need this week at least to deal with our grief and our loss, and I know you'll understand that, because again, this is something that universally connects every one of the 7 billion of us on this planet, is understanding what it's like to lose someone close to you. So I'm sorry that this isn't the most interesting or intriguing or educational episode that we've ever done, but I appreciate you understanding. We've only had to do this one other time in our first year of filming, when we lost another close personal friend, where we kind of took a little time off. I'm not really taking this week off. I did film something, but there may not be much else this week. We'll see. I'm going to try and pull myself up by my bootstraps and go on and do what I do. So anyway, if you got questions or comments, or if you have personal experiences, I know some of you have lost loved ones recently. You've written and told me, and I'm deeply sorry about that. I really am. But if you want to share an experience down the comment stream, feel free. You know, this is a community, and we're all here to support each other. If you're new here, well, bummer timing that you would join us on this episode. Usually we're much more cheerful, and we got lots more to show you, so I hope you'll click subscribe and come along for the adventure. And as always, folks, well, thank you for watching.